my advice for my fellow runners going into the race would be one, to, and I kind of said this already in previous videos, but to cultivate a sense of gratitude and to be thankful in all circumstances. I had read a book a couple years ago by Corrie ten Boom, and she survived a Nazi concentration camp. And she talked about how her sister was with her and they smuggled in a Bible to the camp. You're not supposed to have those. And something that they had read that day was that passage of giving thanks in all circumstances. So they start listing all the things that they're obviously thankful for, that you would genuinely be thankful for. The fact that she was there with her sister. That was about it on the list. And so the sister goes on and she says, well, I'm thankful for the fleas. And Corey is like, I'm not going to be thankful for the fleas. They're really annoying. Like, they could not be here and I would be better off. And Betsy, the sister, insisted, no, like we should be thankful in all things, even these fleas. So then they start to list the things that are unpleasant and expressing their thanks to God for that. Come to find out later, their gratitude was actually appropriate. They were able to host Bible studies with their fellow prison mates. And that was because there were no guards around, because the guards were annoyed by the fleas. So they were able to have these secretive meetings with anyone without anyone knowing because of the fleas. So there was reason to be thankful. So when you're in the race, there might be things that are unpleasant that you encounter, and you can still be grateful for those, even though you might not actually have that feeling of gratitude, still express it. And as my cross country coach in high school would always say, when it really didn't make sense, it'll be fun. It really will be fun. There will be fun parts. There'll be parts that'll be less fun, but it'll be really fun to talk about even the not fun parts when it's all over.
Daniel's top three pieces of advice for a 4-hour-ish marathon. So my number one, I have three pieces of advice. Number one is keep in mind that this is just advice, and you are going to receive forever all kinds of different advice, including conflicting advice. I did, and especially if you're a newbie. It can be a little disheartening because you'll get conflicting pieces of advice. I remember when I first started training for a marathon, I heard that you absolutely have to do a 20-mile run, right? And then I heard from somewhere else, and this is from a coach too, that said, no, you need to do at least like 22-mile run. But then I found out that, the Hanson's Brooks project, which produced Des Linden, my favorite runner of all time. She's from Michigan. She ran she won the 2018 Boston. Her longest long run is 16 miles. So it can be a little confusing. So as you receive advice, my advice is to try out what works. Try out what works. Throw out what doesn't. Stick with what feels good. If it sounds bad, toss it. Just ignore it. So try things out. But when someone is giving advice, myself included, what we are really saying is, for me, this is what works. For me, try X, Y, Z. So, and you could try it, take it or leave it. Number two, speaking of trying things out, use your long runs as a dry run race day. So figure out about what time are you going to be waking up in the morning of the Chicago Marathon, if at all possible. Set your alarm clock for that. Don't sleep in until noon. Wake up early. What do you think you're going to eat 2 hours before the marathon? Try it. I found that, for example, for me, I thought oatmeal would be a fabulous idea before a marathon. It doesn't. I felt sick to my stomach when I was running. Some people will have a little bit of oatmeal and it settles fine. For me, it's bagels. So try out absolutely everything. Try out your gear. What do you think you're going to wear during the marathon? Try it out, because during your long runs, during training, that is the time to find out that maybe one pair of shoes that you thought would be fabulous, by the time you hit whatever the 15th mile, it chafes on your ankles or whatever. So try out your gear. Try out a running mantra if you're going to use it. Does praying a rosary work for you during a long run? Try it out. For some people it does. I believe Galen Rupp prays the rosary at every marathon, and that's kind of his go-to thing. For me, that sounded nice, but It doesn't work for me. I pray before and after my runs, but I need music. I need something with a steady rhythm, just to keep me on my pace. So try things out. That's the time to try out your head game, your gear, your nutrition game. That's the time to find out if tailwind works, or if you need a goo or blocks or whatever. So try out all that stuff. Don't try out anything new on race day. It will be tempting, especially if you go to like the expo, but don't do that. Number 3, regarding gear, the one thing you probably won't be able to try out during your training, because it's during the summer months, is you're going to want probably layers. 2001, it was very hot. It was weirdly hot at the Chicago Marathon. That's not normal. Excuse me, 2021. It was hot, but 2022, it was very chilly and it was very cold. And that's probably normal. It's the upper Midwest, right? And it's October. So number 3 regarding gear, wear some layers, wear some throwaway layers. This is what I wore actually last year. I wore a hoodie and I was able to take it off as I got hot, which didn't take, I think it was like mile 10, I started to feel warm because it was very cool. I was able to take this off and tie it around my waist. And then I wore these fancy schmancy, they're not fancy, they were really cheap. I bought them on clearance somewhere years ago. But they're not for circulation, they're for keeping your arms warm, because it was still pretty chilly even with this off. So this has built-on mittens, but you might want just regular gloves or something. And if you do not want to keep your gear as you're shedding layers, you can throw it off to the side, either at the start line or at the water stops. They collect everything and donate it, but be prepared. Look at the weather report, maybe 3 days actually, honestly, because weather changes, right? 3 days before the marathon, to see what is the weather going to be like. But be prepared to wear layers and layer up, because if you are a mid-packer or you're back of the pack, you're going to be waiting a long time at those starting corrals. So you are going to want to layer up and wear like sweatpants or something that you can discard before the race actually starts. So keep warm, because you will burn fuel. You're burning energy to keep warm. You're going to want to use that energy for the actual running of the race. So those are the Daniel Aponzi 3 pieces of tried and true marathon advice.
Well, some advice that I would give, when I ran my first marathon, I was in my 20s, and I had been a basketball player and ran and all I thought I needed to do was get my runs in. What I didn't realize is, as I got older, your muscles weaken, your stabilizing muscles weaken, your core weakens, and if you're busy and you're working, you're not strengthening those. And when you train for the marathon, it's a very narrow training. The muscles you exercise are very narrow, and your stabilizing muscles, I think, get disproportionately weaker. So my biggest advice, because I had physical therapy after a marathon a couple of years ago, is work in at least a couple times a week lateral stabilizer muscle exercises, core muscle exercises, and quad, the front of your leg, quadriceps muscle exercises. There's on the internet, you can find lots of physical therapists and giving recommendations on these exercises. I just think that to have that in your plan, to get it doesn't have to be long. It could be twice a week, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, where you're doing some core and stabilizer. That, to me, to avoid physical therapy, do it before, and that would be my biggest advice.